right, so we're recording. Brendan Childs, I think that's the name I got, so hopefully I'm right. Do you,
Singular, sorry. It's
Brendan?
child.
Oh, is it? Wonderful.
But it does make sense in the context of Brandon Child's interview. Yeah.
There you go. So Brendan Child, do I have your permission to record this interview for publishing on Starlight Sessions?
By all means.
Cool. Thanks so much. So today, Brendan Child, all the way from Toronto, alt rock, pop rock artist, made a new track, Time, I believe. And we're going to talk about that and a couple of the other tracks you came out with. First of all, thank you so much for chatting with me today, Brendan.
Thanks so much for having me.
So first off, not everyone got to see your bio like I did. What is Time about?
Well, most generally, it's about a past romantic experience of mine, a failed romantic experience. But it's a little bit about how you can derive benefit out of something that sort of seems toxic or, something that isn't very pleasant to go through.
I think every artist almost has a breakup track or an X track, and if they don't, I mean, they better get on it. Love
and trope at this point.
Yeah, well, love and also failed love basically drives the music industry. So, so before that, you had Same Old Story, as I recall, and then Balaclava. I think I got that right. What are those tracks and where did they come from? And now, are these all part of an album, or are these just 3 independent singles?
Well, so the idea is sort of for them to be standalone singles, but the plan is for them to, ultimately be re-released as part of an EP, which I plan to hopefully put out by the end of the year. In terms of what they're about, SOS, shortened for Same Old Story, is really just about like being your own catalyst for change. I wrote it at a time where I wasn't so happy, was feeling a little down with where I was at, and it was just I was just sitting there. I was like, if you keep doing the same thing, nothing's going to change. And there's a line in the song, if I keep on doing nothing, nothing's going to change. And, I think that really accurately sums up the general vibe of that song. And then Balaclava is sort of more along the same lines as Time thematically. But less like breakup based, more like passion in the moment type thing. But yeah.
Interesting. Well, I was just curious on how you because oftentimes when artists start writing songs as singles, they end up sort of taking on that time of their life and almost become an album because it's a story, because you were writing the songs. Those things happened in your life. Something interesting, you recorded everything on at least Time, as I know, except for the drums.
Same thing with the other 2 tracks as well. And most of it right here where I'm sitting currently.
Are these all COVID age? Like, were these songs all written and produced and everything through COVID? So
Balaclava I started recording just before the world, caught fire.
Yeah, I like to say it took a smoke break, but that's just my
like that. But I had actually written all 3 of them in the year leading up to COVID. I've since found it's a little hard to write without having any real life experiences for so long. At least trying to write from like a genuine place.
Absolutely.
But all of the recording took place through lockdown. The first Balaclava I recorded with some local producers. I am running a blank right now. It's horrible of me. Funkushima
Mm.
Records, I believe they're called, a local Toronto studio, two guys, Kale and Matt. Um, but ultimately, while I did go in to record my like vocal and guitar takes in studio, what you actually hear on the record were re-records that I did from my own place, that were done during the lockdown. And then for SOS and Time, I worked with a producer that I found through this platform called Sound Better, which was just bought by Spotify.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you've heard anything about it, but it's like a marketplace for like music people, essentially. Like anyone on the creative side of music, you
Hmm.
can connect with. And like, you know, if you want to work with like Taylor Swift's like engineer, you can like contact them, or like Paul McCartney's like mixer or something, like, you know, like crazy stuff
Wonderful.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just digging through that, and I found a guy whose sound I really liked, Steve Wilmot. Um, and so I reached out to him, and he helped take these songs from a place that was, you know, a lot rougher to the sound that, you know, is out there now.
Yeah, and I always like to ask about recording through COVID because depending on what province you were in, what time of year it was recorded over the last, 16 months or, well, no, it's been 12 months now, hasn't it?
So yeah,
Jesus, Jesus. But anyway, it feels like forever. I'm just saying. It could be like 3 years. I don't know.
yeah.
But
Time
anyway,
passes differently now.
it sure does. I like to say that the days go slow, but the weeks and months seem to go fast. It's kind of a weird continuum. But I like to ask because, there's certain times I remember in Alberta where bands could and currently are allowed to go to the studio and record, which, there was also a lot of time where there wasn't. So I think that the home recording process, a lot of people have seen that they can go a long way with what you have in your apartment in your case.
Oh, oh, big time. Uh, yeah, like that's my story essentially. You know, like I've always sort of been a reclusive type, and I've always loved the convenience of being able to record, like, you know, roll out of bed, and whenever inspiration strikes, I'd like to be able to get the idea down, or even just like playing for fun. Like, you know, I like to be able to have it all there.
Hmm.
So I spent a whole lot of time figuring out how I could record guitar silently through my computer. So like that's what that box is right there. It like takes the load out of my amp so I can play it through my computer. So like barring, you know, me singing, everything is actually quite silent. Um, and it's intentional. You know, I wanted to be able to record unimpeded throughout lockdown. Although, you know, all the stuff I put into place prior to the lockdown was just
Yeah.
convenient that it worked out that way. But, you know, I would say to like anybody who's like trying to record, like you really don't need to go into a studio, like rent out some super expensive studio in order to put together like decent sounding music. At least, yeah, I'd like to think my music is decent sounding, but like, you know, I know that good quality sound is achievable in a home studio, 100%.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have a couple bands that I work with that have done a bunch of recording through COVID, all at home,
Yeah,
and then it gets sent off to be mixed and mastered, and it comes back sounding, good.
exactly.
I also hope on account of I'm trying to get people to listen to it too. So you talked about studios or producers and things that helped you. Who else was involved with these tracks? Obviously, you don't have a whole band to run through, but I'm sure there's some other people.
uh, yeah, well, it's funny. On the creative side, barring another Toronto local, Noah Mintz, who's a mastering engineer, everything for SOS and Time, at least, was done between me and Steve. Um, you know, and like the even funnier thing is I've never actually spoken to Steve in person or like face to face. Like we've never FaceTimed or like spoken on the phone. We just like communicate through like a chat interface.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it forces you to like think a little bit about what you're gonna say in advance, but like it's a testament to like you can sort of get away with a, a looser structure, or you know, less face to face time
Mm-hmm.
intensive
Oh,
structure.
oh, absolutely. We have I have graphic designers and producers and all kinds of things from all over the states and Europe and everywhere people that
Yeah.
I've just, you know, you find advertising different places and you end up working with them. And no, I've never met them and I likely won't, if I'm being
Yeah.
realistic. You know, we're not even from the same country. So plan moving forward. I mean, you have some music, obviously, with enough roles for a band. So is that
True.
something that you see in your future for, you know, the ability to tour? Or, you know, are you more of a country star where you're always going to be the man and just hire some hired guns for the road? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, no, like I very much would like to put together like an actual band where there could be more of a sort of creative interplay,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like you know more co-writers on board, so it could be like a more collaborative experience. Like that's the one thing I really miss about uh, the one thing about music that I miss most due to COVID shutting down is that collaborative element.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I think that it can really drive much more creative results in the end. And so like that is one of my goals for the shorter to hopefully short future, is to
Yes.
put together a group of people that hopefully will become a band over time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know a few guys that are sort of, you know, solo acts that replace an entire band
Mm.
and but eventually to tour.
It's
you
not
you
likely feasible.
you can't, no, you can't play on your all the instruments on
Yeah,
your own on
yeah,
stage, unfortunately. So I always like to ask that because you know, some guys are totally content just putting out their music and it's, you know, a secondary thing, but let's be honest, touring and gigging is how you earn.
yeah, for sure.
um
And I think my music could also be elevated by bringing in more people to contribute as well. It all just being the result of like what's in my head, it is somewhat limiting at times. It's hard to remain objective throughout the creative process when it's just you in the room and like what you're creating. So it's an extra benefit to have other people on board in that sense.
Well, and the other thing too is, I mean, as talented as any one artist might be, you know, with the saying, "Jack of all trades, master of none."
Exactly.
So, you know, it would, you know, to bring in that aspect, I just find that interesting, right? When somebody
Mhm.
puts out a full album on their own, you know, touring down the road. Um, I know that I've asked you this about who was involved with your, you know, your album and stuff, but are there people in your life that maybe have helped you throughout your music career that are worth a shout out or mention at this particular juncture in your life?
There are definitely a couple of buddies of mine that have like spurred me on to actually put out my own music. Um, all of which are in music themselves. For instance, Scott Goodwin, him first and foremost is like the reason that I actually put out like my own content,
Right.
instead of just being a hired guitar player.
Mm,
I started off, although, my experience playing live is quite limited. I have played, a couple of shows around Toronto for Scott Goodwin as
mm,
his lead guitar player. Um, and then also the bass player of that band is also in his own band, Spence Bridgewater, another guy who's pushed me to put out my own stuff. Those two guys have been huge at like driving me to be a bit more vulnerable in my creative pursuits. So thanks, guys.
there you go. Well, luckily, if they're good friends of yours, they'll likely be dudes who end up watching this, so they'll know that
Yeah.
you appreciate their help and advice. So that being said, something I ask every single artist all the time: if you had one piece of advice, your last dying legacy words as a musician to every other, you know, somebody starting out as an artist or musician, what would it be? No pressure.
Oh man, I wish I like had any real wisdom, but like I know nothing. But eh, from what I've read, we'll go off stuff like that. I'll phrase somebody else's ideas.
Okay.
Um, I would say create for yourself. Write for an audience of one.
Mm.
Some famous person said that who I can't remember. So just putting it out there. Those aren't my thoughts, but you'll never be able to please everyone. And if you try, you'll be miserable, you know?
Mm.
So at the end of the day, if you're happy with what you're putting out, what more can you like really ask for, I think.
That's actually one of those pieces of advice that I hear often, and I like to hear it over and over again because it really is one of those things that even myself doing interviews and things like this, not everybody is 100% thrilled to watch me chat, you know?
Yeah. You know, like I
So,
wish I was happy with my own stuff all the time, but I'm not.
yeah.
But it's nothing to work for.
Yes, well, yes, absolutely. And I mean, we're always our own biggest critic, but if you can, at least feel good about it, I like that always as a piece of advice. So, is there anything that I missed, maybe perhaps that you would like to cover or discuss about upcoming tracks or anything? I usually would talk about upcoming shows or tours, but obviously, you know,
Bit
unless
tricky.
yeah, that nobody has a whole lot of answers for that one.
Uh, I wish I did, honestly. Yeah, no, like I don't have anything really like concrete in the pipeline at the moment. Like we're working on the next release, but there's nothing really too much to disclose for the time being. I'd say like if you like what you've heard, it would be nice to follow along, and there'll be more music, very shortly.
Right
Um,
on. I know that Time was a little bit of a surprise release, as I recall. Like, it wasn't as expected as the other two.
like all of my songs have like generally just been like I throw them out there. There's no really forethought to it. I just want to put out stuff as soon as it's ready. I had previously sort of thought like, would there be benefit to like planning ahead, like trying to, I don't know, get it out there in advance, but I just want to create more and worry less about like the pushing things out, at least for now, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with just kind of getting that sort of feel for how it is, because these are the only three tracks that you yourself have put out on your own, right? So
Mm.
that's a fairly new endeavor for you as far as that goes. I also, obviously, because I booked this through Eric Alper, I'm assuming you have Eric's help, and I'll just say that he is a very, very learned man in the music scene. So
Oh
listen to
yeah,
him, because even I would listen to him, and we do almost the same job. So I'm
Eric's a good
just saying
guy.
he's great. Thank you so much, Brandon, again for chatting with me today. We'll make sure all your links are in the post when we put out this video. Spotlite, Starlight Sessions. Thanks again, man.
Thanks, Dylan.